Hey there, guys. Yesterday I was reading through an AmmoLand article, and it was about the mayor of New York City trying to divert blame for a lot of the shortcomings that he and his own police department and the DAs in the city have contributed to, or how they have contributed to the spike in crime. And of course, they're trying to blame everybody else, just like the wackos in the far left typically do. They never put any accountability on themselves. It's always blame somebody else. In this case, because they have no control over the actual people, they're trying to blame guns, of course. More specifically, gun retailers. The New York City Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice just released the annual report on firearm trafficking, and the reason, they say, crime is still plaguing the city is because federal law does not allow them to publicly, quote, name and shame, unquote, firearm retailers in other states with no connection to the crimes committed to the city that never sleeps, New York City. So essentially, this guy wants to blame a retailer whenever a firearm gets used in the commission of a crime. I want you to hold on to that thought of commission of a crime, of a firearm being used in a crime. Hold on to that thought. We're going to get double back to that here in a second. So this is an administration, the mayor in New York City, and this is mirrored across the entire country. This is not just New York City. This is every single big blue city out there. Every single one, from coast to coast. They have lost control in any sense whatsoever of the crime rates in their areas, so they're looking for other areas to blame, in this case, a gun retailer. So now if a gun is used, whether it's from outside the state, because they want to say that the other states are contributing to their crime, which would be their way of pressuring the federal government to put some federal laws in place, gun control laws, that they think would help. I don't think they really believe these additional laws would help. Surely they can't be that stupid. I know Eric Adams looks stupid, but I don't think he's that stupid. So this has got to be an act. This has got to be, we're buying time until we can get a handle on this kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not possible for these people to be that blatantly stupid. Now, since I'm not as stupid as these people, and I know better than to blame a gun or a retailer for a criminal committing a crime, I pulled up this very recent study from just last month from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, where they actually looked at crime in New York, more specifically upstate New York and areas outside New York City. Now, there are some other studies that I'll mention here in a minute that look at specifically New York. Now, this DCJ study showed that 67% of defendants who had a recent prior violent felony arrest in the past year, who were released under the current New York City, or the New York State rather, bail reform laws, were rearrested within at least 2 years of their arraignment, usually less. 49% were rearrested for a felony arrest. And in a separate Manhattan Institute study in August of 2022, it showed that New York City rearrest rates were close to 70% for people with prior records charged with larceny, burglary, robbery, and criminal contempt while their case was pending. So we see what the problem is, right? They put in this bail reform to try to pacify the voters, because we know these are Democrat voters, and we know that most of the people in prison are Democrat voters, people in graveyards too, but they had to pacify these people. They had to do the whole George Floyd, Prince George or whatever they called him, and they had to make people feel like, okay, now the criminals might be the actual victims. That's the direction they were heading in. And that's whenever they put into this bail reform out there to try to release these people with either little to no bail whatsoever. And of course, we're seeing these massive spikes in rearrest rates, violent and nonviolent. One other thing that I would like to point out is that arrests decreased from 184,000 in 2019 to 154,000 in 2022, even while the crime rate was increasing. There were 17,000 more crimes in 2022 than in 2019, yet there were 30,000 fewer arrests. You know what that means, right? They're not arresting these people. That means the crime rate is spiking and the arrest rate is going down because they're simply not pursuing these criminals anymore. Again, this is of the city's own making. The city is creating this problem. The mayor's office and the state as well, the governor's office, they are all creating this problem in their own area, and they're looking for somebody to blame because they can't take the blame. Again, the lack of accountability on the wackos on the far left. So they got to blame something. So there's no other way to explain this away unless they can blame what? The old current scapegoat, guns. Now, why does all of this, and why does any of this even matter? They're wanting to state that we're seeing a spike in crimes, but it's the result of a retailer or a manufacturer. Joe Biden has been calling for the ability to be able to sue manufacturers. What the federal government and what all the gun grabbers want is they want the ability to sue anybody in the firearms industry to put these people out of business. That includes retailers. That's why Joe Biden is going after these mom and pop FFLs to put them out of business. It is a concerted effort by them to put these people out of business. There's a massive spike in what these guys are doing as far, and it's an alarming rate, going after these small mom and pops for not crossing a T, dotting an I, and forcing them out of business. And that is a victory to them. When they make a gun business go out of business, that is a victory. It in no other way can it be described by these people except a victory. They pump their fists when anything gun related goes out of business. That also goes for a manufacturer. That's what they ultimately would love to do, is put these manufacturers out of business. So if we can increase, and I'm speaking theoretically in their minds, if we can increase the amount of guns used at a crime, then we can name and shame these retailers and manufacturers during the investigation. In other words, do FOIA requests and get all the information and name and shame these people, even though they're not connected to these crimes at all. This massive spike in crime that I'm showing you. If they can somehow do what this mayor in New York City wants to do and name and shame these people openly, that's a victory to them because they feel like they can put them out of business. So how do we get those numbers up? And again, I'm speaking theoretically in their mind. They sit back and go, how do we get the numbers up? Let's say Glock, for instance, right? How do we get and go after Glock, one of the most popular guns on the planet? And definitely, if you're looking at a retailer, if we can target Glock, and I'm not trying to pick on Glock here, I'm just using them as a perfect example as a very popular firearm, it's very likely that there's a lot of Glocks being sold. So let's target Glocks, right? The story that I showed you a couple days ago about the ATF raid in Arkansas where they shot the man in the head. You notice what they did, right? They claimed that their reason for going after him the way they did was because he was reselling guns that were, quote, ending up at crime scenes and being used in the, quote, commission of crimes, right? That was their claim. Their own affidavit showed that 3 of the 6, only half they described. The other half they did not even describe anything about the crime scenes. So you have to believe what they did describe was the best they had, like the best story they had. The other 3 they didn't mention because there was really nothing to talk about. They're probably making that up too. But the 3 they described were suspected marijuana. They pull these guys over. They target them. They target the actual guys, knowing that's who they're going to go after. They have local law enforcement, or with the help of ATF, pull them over. And then what? We suspect marijuana use. What's that mean? It means they pull them over and say, I think I smelled marijuana. Then they arrest them, or they search them, and they find that they have a firearm on them, and then they arrest these people as a result of that. They arrested them for suspected marijuana. That's what they're calling in the commission of a crime. That's what they're calling a crime scene. When you pull a guy over with a vehicle and a gun, rolls the window down, I think I smell weed. Can I search your vehicle? When they consent, they find the gun, and then they say, even though they don't find weed, they say we suspected marijuana use, and that was the crime. That's how you see this new spike, and we're going to see this new spike in these guns being found at crime scenes. That's how they're going to get these numbers to inflate. So what better way than the mayor and these other people to suddenly say, look at all these guns being used at the crime scene. Now I want to name and shame these people. It's an easy way to target a specific group of people who really are not committing a crime. And guess what? You're going to let them off anyway, right? They're going to plead down on whatever the gun charge is. They're not going to get a charge on the suspected marijuana use. So no harm, no foul, right? They're using these people in these inner cities to bait these types of numbers and to inflate them, to get them inflated. And they're using actual people and running them through the system in order to get numbers that they want so that they can go after people, manufacturers, and retailers. Watch for this increased number of guns. You're going to suddenly see, because they figured it out. It worked in this ATF case, right? They put a bullet in the guy's head as a result of suspected marijuana use. His guns were used at crime scenes. Oh my God! They're going to start using this method of suspected marijuana use. Then they can take that, whether there was marijuana there or not, take that, boom, that's a crime. Another gun used in a crime. So you're going to start seeing all these FFLs, when there's 2, 3, 4 guns from an FFL used in the commission of a crime, suspected weed use. Now they're going to want to name and shame these people to put them out of business. And again, it's going to go back to the manufacturers at some point too, because you're going to have your Glocks and your Smith & Wessons and everybody else sucked into this. All goes back to them not doing their jobs, but yet they're going to benefit from it by creating another number that they can use to go after the people they hate the most. Now, regarding this mayor, I can't help but mention also, which was included in this AmmoLand article, that in late 2023, the FBI abruptly seized Mayor Adams' phone and iPad as a result of a political corruption investigation into fundraising improprieties. Well, that investigation continues at this moment. So we are looking at this mayor definitely trying to get somebody else to look somewhere else during all of this as he cries wolf on crime numbers that he himself helped to create. Now, I have a suggestion. If the people that are anti-gun and anti-constitution are so hell-bent on us naming and shaming retailers and manufacturers and being able to sue them, I have a theory here, and work with me on this. If we try to use a little bit of logic, I know that sounds crazy, but if we attempt to use a little bit of logic and realize, as we all know, that the gun truly is not the problem and that retailer and that manufacturer had nothing to do with that criminal committing that crime of whatever it is, whether it's suspected weed or the actual violent crime that these people are getting off of in New York City. What if we, since we're looking for the real root cause of the problem, what if we look at these governors, mayors, DAs, all these people who were either not making arrests or letting that recidivism rate increase, that relapse rate, where they're capturing these people, imposing no bail on them, and then they get rearrested? What if when those people get rearrested, we treat that like we found a gun in a crime? In other words, we look at that person, trace it back to who the DA was, the mayor was, and the governor was. And if they had a hand in this person not receiving a bail, so they got back out on the street and were rearrested for a violent crime, maybe we sue them. Because that's the same logic they want to use towards the gun. And we're closer to the root cause by actually identifying the person. So I would say these people are more to blame than any manufacturer or FFL dealer.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.